Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to Spooky Times. This is the Grimm Times podcast, our Halloween special. Tonight, as I have said on Facebook and Twitter, it is going to be only ghost stories and only true ghost stories all night. So, for this first story, I'm going to have my lovely fiancée, Christy, read it out loud. This is from a buddy of mine named John. It sounds like he's had quite a few experiences in his life. We're still getting into that, though, and I hope to have him on the podcast at some point. So, here to read the story is Christy. I'll let her take it from there.
When looking to where to start my story, I will begin with this fact that a new place can be haunted. For whatever reason it was haunted, I am not sure why, for my wife and I only lived there for a month and we moved promptly. The year was 2004, and we moved into the middle apartment of a triplex that was brand new in October of that year. The other two apartments were already rented and seemed to us to be a good move. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and was quite spacious. I will try and describe the layout for you so you can have a better idea in your mind's eye of how it looked. When you walked through the front door, you entered the living room and dining room. To the left was a door that led to the 2-car garage, and the right was the living area. The kitchen was behind the living room, which was shaped more like a hallway-type kitchen that had a back door to the backyard. To the left of the living room was the dining area, and then straight back was the second bedroom. Down to the left of the second bedroom was the main bathroom, and then in the corner was the master bedroom and bathroom. The first week was quiet. Nothing really happened, just needed to adjust to the new surroundings and get used to our work schedules. I was working 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., and my wife was working 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., so we were passing glances in the night. I first noticed something odd in the living room one night. I was sitting on the couch watching television, and I got this feeling that someone was watching me in the corner of the living room. That is when I felt a chill and a cold spot while sitting there as if someone had crossed in front of me. I did not want to tell my wife any of this, for I did not want to frighten her, and I could just pawn it off as my imagination. Things were quiet for about a week, and nothing happened on the weekend. The next week, I would get the feeling of being watched over my shoulder, and this continued for a few days. Then it all came to a head. It was about 6:30 in the evening. I had eaten dinner, cleaned up the kitchen, and then sat down to watch a movie. That feeling of being watched came over me again, as I had grown accustomed to just leave it be. Then, without warning, I heard the loudest banging noise I had ever heard. When I jumped up and turned around, all the doors on all the cabinets were swinging open. Once again, I did not mention this to my wife, and that night she got her experience during the night. We were in bed and had a television in the corner of the room, and about 3 o'clock in the morning it came on, and it was loud, and all it did is show static. This was the only experience my wife had in the apartment. The last week we were there, I still had the feeling in the living room of being watched, and the feeling that someone would walk past me. Still had the cold spot and chilly breeze at least once a night. About 2 nights before we moved, I had my first experience with sleep paralysis. It was again about 3 a.m., and I woke up out of a dead sleep and knew someone was standing at the end of the bed. When I went to sit up and look, I could not get up at all. I could not make a sound or anything, and I was completely immobilized. It lasted about 3 minutes, and when I was able to move, I sat up and there was nothing there, not even the feeling of something in the room. Within the next 2 days, we moved out of the apartment and have been living in peace without any more experiences. It was the only time we ever lived anywhere haunted.
All right, thank you, Christy. I just want to mention something here. It actually brings up a really good point in the story. Sleep paralysis. This happens to a lot of people. You will have it happen to you at least once in your life. And I have yet to have it happen, and definitely do not want to have it happen. But that is the common description of it. You cannot move whatsoever. You're pretty much stuck. You can't make a sound either. And you always feel like there's somebody either standing next to you or standing at the end of the bed, somewhere in the room, and you just feel like you have to look at them or you have to find out what's going on. And that's human nature, I guess. But, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. And sometimes that goes along with the old hag syndrome. And this is a really common thing as well. A lot of people will describe a heaviness on their chest when they wake up, and they can't hardly breathe, and they can't move. They're paralyzed. And even some people describe a feeling on their throat of being kind of suppressed and not being able to breathe. And I mean, some people have gone as far to say that they have seen the old hag, like sitting on their chest, and that's commonly what it is. They think this entity or a spirit is sitting on their chest and actually, keeping them from breathing, and usually eventually they'll wake up out of it and shall be gone. But one person described an old hag experience where he actually saw her hands on his neck, like he saw her reach out and hold him down, and he couldn't hardly breathe. and all he could see in her face was darkness. Like, he couldn't make out anything, but somehow he just knew that she was smiling at him, and it was like the most wicked smile you can even imagine. And eventually he woke up out of it, and he tried to scream for his wife, though, and she couldn't even hear him because he couldn't make a sound, and she was fast asleep right next to him in the bed. And as well, just fair warning to everybody, they say that if you sleep on your back, you're at a higher risk for having sleep paralysis. And a lot of experts will say it's just a mental thing or just a scientific thing. But then again, if you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously open to other things, and I believe this is one of those other things. So I'm going to move on to the next story here. This is from Christy's best friend, Alyssa, and she was kind enough to send me this story on Facebook, so I really appreciate that. So here it is. I'm just going to read it as she has written it. Hopefully I can convey it the way that she wants it. When I was about 10-ish, I was sleeping, and for some reason I woke up. I looked beside my bed, and there's this girl standing there looking at me. This girl looked to be about age 5, since she didn't stand very high. So after I hid under my blankets, I finally got the courage to face this person, so I hit them with my pillow. Keep in mind that I was a child, and this was my only weapon at hand. Satisfied that I was now safe, I went back to sleep. This was a very long night because I must have woken up 5 to 10 times, and again that girl was there, each time with that same look on her face. I haven't seen this girl since that night, but I am scared of being in the dark. It's creepy to me now. And even though I haven't seen anything in this house, I still feel like there's something here. Noises like something falling always happen, and when I go to investigate I can't find anything out of the ordinary, but it's still creepy. I will not be in this house alone at night. Now that's my story. My dad has one too. Again, maybe 10 to 13 years ago, when we first moved into this house and my dad was asleep, he woke and saw an old woman sitting in a rocking chair across the room, just staring at him. Since that night he hasn't noticed anything, but he did get rid of the chair. So, again, I appreciate this story. A couple things that really stood out to me. One was the girl standing beside the bed. I mean, I'm not sure really what to make of that. I mean, if you get into children being spirits or entities or ghosts, I mean, you really have to wonder about it, because you wouldn't think that a benevolent God would let a child aimlessly roam the earth, not really knowing where to go and just, hiding in a house their entire life. So, could it be, some sort of purgatory for the child, or could it be a demonic presence kind of imitating this child to give him a more innocent appearance? Or there's any number of theories you could go with there. And as for the old woman in the rocking chair, I mean, that's another really interesting one. I mean, that could almost go along with the old hag type of occurrence, but it didn't seem that malevolent to me. But yeah, I would definitely get rid of the chair. I'm totally with him on that one. So, anyway, moving on to the next story. This also may not be demonic. It may fall under the creature category, but we're not sure exactly. So, alright, here we go. 7 years ago, my wife and our 3 children moved into an apartment complex. The complex consists of 5 apartments connected to each other, and each apartment is a 3-bedroom condo-style home. The bedrooms are upstairs, 2 are next to each other, while the master bedroom is down a hallway separated by a bathroom. This apartment would be the first for our new family. From the very first day we moved in, unexplainable happenings would take place. First, the lights would go on and off upstairs. I reported this to the maintenance guy the next day. He changed the light bulbs thinking they were somehow damaged from all the heavy items the movers brought upstairs. Yet throughout the first week, it was always the same, lights going on and off. Every day I told the maintenance guy, who finally, getting sick of my pestering, agreed to test the electrical fixtures. He found nothing wrong. I let it slide, figuring it was just something we had to get used to, but it could get quite annoying. I would get up at 2 a.m. to fix the baby a bottle, and just as I hit the first step going downstairs, the light would switch off. Pitch black. Annoying, but I could handle it. What was more difficult to handle was seeing a little shadow in the kitchen standing near the cellar door. The shadow would disappear under the door when I got too close. It was just my imagination, of course, it had to be, but this began to become a nightly routine. My little friend was always there. I continued to dismiss it as my imagination until the next day, when we invited some close friends to spend the night. But they didn't stay, they left during the night. Puzzled, we asked them why they would abruptly leave without even so much as a goodbye. Were they unhappy with the accommodation we set up, a mattress on the living room floor downstairs? No, they told us they'd left because they couldn't sleep because of a small shadow boy who would peek in and run upstairs, stomping loudly. Okay, it wasn't my imagination now that someone else had seen it. It was time to ask my wife if anything strange had happened to her. She admitted that on numerous occasions she had seen the little shadow boy, but didn't want to say anything, lest I think she was crazy. Now that it was out in the open, I felt it was time to ask other people about our new dwelling. As it happens, I have a friend who had been a contractor at the apartment's initial construction. He asked where we were living, and upon telling him where, it drew a blank look on his face. Then he tried to change the conversation. Interested in why he looked so strange, I pressed him on the matter, and he confessed this weird story. When he was working on the building, he arrived early one day to pour concrete walls for the basement at about 6 a.m. Upon arriving, he went to look for his father, who was also a contractor, in the excavated hole to the setup. Nearing the hole, he noticed a small child in a ragged robe like a monk's hunched over the hole. He yelled at the figure to get out of there, thinking it to be some kid playing. The being turned to him, and he saw that it wasn't a child at all, but some kind of creature. In trying to describe it, all he could think of was Yoda from Star Wars. The creature then sprang from the hole and ran, hissing all the way into the woods. He said he finished the job but vowed never to go there again. From then on, when I saw my little shadow, I would try to ignore it and do whatever I had to get done. Months went by without anything strange happening, but it wasn't over, as we would find out, not by a long shot. One night, just seconds from falling asleep, we awoke to a loud scream, louder than anything I had ever heard. My wife and I looked at each other in shock, then realized it was the baby. We ran down the hall to her room in a panic. The look on the baby's face was of sheer terror. She was drenched in sweat and screaming like nothing before. We checked the crib to see if she had been bitten by a spider or something. Nothing, so I went downstairs to fix her a bottle, and then I heard my wife yell, "What?" I finished the bottle and went upstairs to see what she had meant. She asked if I had yelled to her, "Put that baby down." She said it was definitely a loud man's voice. I replied, "No." She grabbed the baby and ran to our room. I now realized that our little friend had just crossed the line. I tore through the living room looking for anything that would reveal it. I found nothing. I left the room and headed down to the hallway. As I was passing our other children's bedroom, its doorknob started to turn. I turned to the door and forcefully entered to confront whatever it was. I saw the shadow jump into the closet. I ran in and tore through that closet like a madman and declared loudly it was over. This woke up the two older kids, who were now standing by the doorway. Coming back to my sanity, I led them to our room to sleep with us for the night. It was a long night, that's for sure. I finally fell asleep as the sun was coming up. That morning I went to the baby's room to investigate, and could find nothing out of the ordinary. We all went back downstairs for breakfast. Our oldest daughter asked why I was throwing all the toys out of the closet last night. I explained that I was looking for something. It was then that she told me in the closet is where her friend lives. "What friend?" I asked. "Batman. He plays with us at night," she said. "Who is Batman?" I asked, curious for information. "Batman is our friend," she explained. "What does he look like?" "He's all black and we can't see his face, but he can fly and he lives in our closet and can go through walls. And he wants us to go with him all the time." Now it came to light. It wants the kids. I told her that this Batman isn't real, and if she sees him to tell him to go away, by himself. They agreed. Not willing to vacate our new home, we tried to go on as usual, if a little more cautious. A few more weeks went by without incident, until one night. My wife and I sometimes fall asleep with the TV on. I awoke around 2 a.m. because the TV was loud and playing a cartoon. I decided I should get up and turn it off before it woke the kids. I rolled over in bed and saw a little person standing there about 3 feet away watching the TV. "You better go back to bed," I said, thinking it was one of the kids. With no response, I reached for my glasses to see which one was disobeying. I put my glasses on and looked, not believing what I saw. I sprang up to a sitting position. The thing watching TV didn't even seem to notice me, but appeared to be mesmerized by the cartoon. It was a little creature, completely gray and skinny. It stood about 2.5 feet tall, with big, black, shiny eyes and a small mouth. The shape of this thing was that of a shaved cat standing on its hind legs. It had no tail that I could see, but had horns curled over its head, like a ram's. The sight of this entity took a moment to sink in. This was no shadow, but the real thing. Although a bit frightened, I still managed to give a good, swift kick at the creature, but when my foot hit the wall hard, I realized I missed. It must have been really into the show because it didn't even flinch, it just stood there. Then it slowly turned toward me and let out this hiss, just like a cat. This time I got off another kick. Bingo! Connection. I felt it curl around my foot and fly out the door into the hallway. It felt so good I ran out to finish it off, but it was gone. I looked all over, but I couldn't find it. I returned to my bedroom. By this time my wife was up. "What's going on?" she grumbled. I replied, "Nothing. Go back to sleep." The next day I was like a new man, alive and ready for round 2, but that was it. We never saw the creature again. It may not have disappeared entirely, though. Our neighbors now have visitors of their own, they tell me, and I offered them my advice. Don't ignore it, confront it, and don't be afraid to stand up to it. It won't go away without a good, swift kick out the door. And that's the end of the story. This one I really don't know what to make of. It seems like it could be a physical being if he was able to kick it. But I do appreciate him actually doing something this time. I've always, thought, hey, why don't you actually, try something? I mean, I don't expect you to fist fight a ghost or anything, but still, I mean, you could do something. I don't know. But anyway, that is my last story for the night. Our podcasts are only about 20 minutes long, so we're pretty much out of time here. We're coming up on it at least. Alright, well, that's the end of our show. Hopefully that made your Halloween a little bit scarier for the evening. Thank you all for listening, and this is the Grimm Times Podcast, Spooky Times.